63%. Let that number sink in for a moment. That is how much of your periorbital collagen scaffold, music, the invisible structural network holding the fat compartments beneath your eyes in their correct anatomical position, has already degraded by the time you reach 65. Not surface wrinkles, the deeper architecture, the structural support itself. And here is what makes that number devastating. This degradation is not linear. It accelerates every year after 60. The rate of periorbital collagen loss increases by approximately 4 to 7%. The bags that feel manageable today will not remain manageable, not without intervention at the cellular level. And every cream, every cold compress, every cucumber slice you have ever applied has worked on the surface of a problem that lives in the architecture beneath. Today I'm going to show you the one preparation backed by specific molecular research that actually reaches that architecture, and the 14-day protocol the research suggests can begin reversing what decades of silent degradation have done. I am Dr. Alan Mandel, and I have spent over 3 decades studying how nutrition and natural compounds interact with human biology. What I'm about to share with you today is not something I found on a beauty blog or a skincare forum. It comes from peer-reviewed research published in the journals Phytomedicine, the Journal of Dermatological Science, and Skin Pharmacology and Physiology. This is not wellness folklore. It is cellular biology, and it has the potential to change not just how your under eye area looks, but how the tissue beneath it actually functions at the molecular level. And if you stay with me until the very end of this video, I'm going to reveal the one preparation error that makes virtually every T-compress completely ineffective. An error so common, so universally repeated, that I have seen it in every single skincare video on this platform that mentions music green tea. You will not want to miss that. Let me begin with something that I believe changes the entire conversation the moment you understand it. Your under-eye bags are not a skin problem. Read that again. And they are not a skin problem. Every cream, every serum, every patch, every roller, every cold compress you have ever applied to the skin beneath your eyes has been addressing the surface layer of a problem that originates 3 anatomical levels beneath your skin. That layer is your periorbital fat compartment system. And understanding what is happening inside it after 60 is the foundation of everything I'm going to teach you today. Here's the anatomy. Beneath the lower eyelid, held in precise anatomical position by a thin but critically important membrane called the orbital septum, are 3 discrete fat compartments: music, the medial, central, and lateral periorbital fat pads. In youth, these fat pads sit behind the orbital septum, held in place by a combination of structural support from the orbital bone, tension from the lower eyelid ligaments, and the integrity of the surrounding collagen scaffold. Think of the orbital septum like the back wall of a shelf. The fat pads are the items on the shelf. The collagen scaffold, the ligaments, and connective tissue is the front lip of the shelf, keeping everything in position. When the shelf is structurally sound, nothing falls forward. When the front lip weakens, music, the items press forward against the wall and eventually push through it. After 60, 3 simultaneous biological processes conspire to destroy that shelf structure. The first is periorbital collagen loss. Your skin fibroblasts, the cells responsible for producing collagen, reduce their output by approximately 1 to 2% per year, beginning in your 30s. By the time you reach 60, this cumulative loss is not subtle. Research published in the British Journal of Dermatology found that postmenopausal women demonstrate up to 60% reduction in dermal collagen density compared to premenopausal levels. And critically, the collagen loss in the periorbital region is disproportionately severe compared to other facial areas. The orbital ligaments and septal tissue that form your shelf structure are predominantly composed of type 1 and type 3 collagen fibers. As those fibers degrade, thin, and lose their tensile strength, the structural integrity of the septum weakens. Music. The fat pads that were held neatly behind that septum begin migrating forward. This is not swelling. This is herniation. The fat physically shifting position into the space vacated by collapsed connective tissue. And no amount of cold compression will ever push herniated fat back. The second process is orbital lymphatic insufficiency. This is, in my view, the most underappreciated mechanism in the entire conversation about under-eye bags, music, and the primary reason that morning puffiness persists in women over 60 in ways it simply did not in their 30s. Your periorbital region has an extraordinarily dense lymphatic network, a system of microscopic vessels specifically designed to drain fluid and cellular debris. In younger tissue, this lymphatic drainage system operates efficiently. You wake with some morning puffiness. The lymphatics drain it within 30 to 45 minutes, and your under eye area returns to its resting state. After 62 things happen to this system simultaneously. The lymphatic vessels themselves lose their contractile efficiency. The muscular contractions that propel lymphatic fluid slow significantly with age. And the lymphatic endothelial cells that line these vessels become progressively less responsive to the molecular signals that activate drainage. Think of your lymphatic system like a network of drainage canals with water pumps at regular intervals. In youth, the pumps run efficiently and the canals drain completely each morning. In aging orbital tissue, the pumps slow. Some stop entirely and the canals begin accumulating fluid that was designed to be cleared. That accumulated lymphatic fluid contributes directly to the puffiness. You see, not as a skin surface problem, but as a deep tissue hydraulic failure. The third process is masked cell proliferation and histamine-mediated fluid leakage. This mechanism is one that the standard conversation almost never includes, and yet research has identified it as a significant contributor. Mast cells are immune cells distributed throughout connective tissue, including the periorbital fat compartments. Music in healthy tissue, they remain largely quiescent. They release their chemical contents only in response to genuine immune threats. In aging tissue, particularly in areas of structural compromise, like the weakened music orbital septum, mast cells become chronically sensitized. They begin releasing histamine in response to stimuli that would never trigger a response in younger tissue, temperature changes, or minor pressure. Histamine causes capillary walls to become permeable. Fluid leaks from the capillaries into the surrounding tissue. The periorbital fat compartments fill with this leaked plasma fluid in addition to the undrained lymphatic fluid already accumulating there. The result is the composite swelling you see each morning. A mixture of herniated fat, stagnant lymphatic fluid, and histamine-driven plasma leakage. Now you understand why cold does not work. Cold temporarily constricts the blood vessels, reducing the rate of plasma leakage for a short time. It does not drain the fluid already there. It does not reactivate the lymphatic pump. It does not stabilize the mast cells. It does not rebuild the collagen scaffold. Cold manages a symptom of 3 simultaneous biological failures for the duration of your morning routine. Then all 3 failures resume exactly where they left off. Music, this is not a criticism of cold therapy. It is a precise description of its biological ceiling. And understanding that ceiling is what makes the mechanism of green tea compressed so remarkable, because green tea does not work the way cold works. Green tea, and I'm going to be very specific throughout this video about preparation and concentration, because those details determine whether you are getting a therapeutic effect or simply warm water with color. Green tea contains 4 distinct classes of bioactive compounds. These address all 3 of the mechanisms I just described simultaneously at the cellular level, and the research documenting this is not preliminary. It is published in some of the most rigorously peer-reviewed dermatological journals in the world. Music, let me take you through each of the 4 molecular mechanisms with the precision they deserve. Coming in at number 4 is caffeine-mediated reduction of transcapillary fluid pressure. I want to be careful here because the role of caffeine in periorbital tissue is music consistently mischaracterized in beauty content. Caffeine is almost universally described as a vasoconstrictor. Music, something that shrinks blood vessels and reduces puffiness through the same mechanism as cold. This description is not wrong. It is simply incomplete to the point of being misleading, because caffeine does not simply constrict perorbital capillaries. The research shows something far more interesting. Caffeine inhibits the enzyme phosphodiesterase, an enzyme that breaks down cyclic AM, the molecular messenger responsible for regulating vascular permeability. When phosphodiesterase is active, cyclic AM is degraded, vascular permeability increases, and fluid leaks from the capillaries into surrounding tissue. When caffeine inhibits phosphodiesterase, cyclic AM accumulates, vascular permeability decreases, and the capillary walls maintain their structural integrity more effectively. Think of cyclic AM like the quality control inspector at a manufacturing facility. When the inspector is present and active, the barrier function of the capillary wall meets its specification. When phosphodiesterase degrades cyclic AM and removes the inspector from the floor, the barrier quality deteriorates and leakage increases. Caffeine in green tea keeps that inspector on the floor. The result is a meaningful reduction in transcapillary fluid pressure, not for 17 minutes, but for the hours following application. as the caffeine penetrates the dermal and subdermal layers and maintains its enzymatic inhibition. A study published in Skin Pharmacology and Physiology found that topically applied caffeine at concentrations achievable through green tea demonstrated measurable reduction in periorbital fluid accumulation at the 4-hour mark, well beyond any cold therapy music window. Coming in at number 3 is EGCG, stimulated fibroblast activation and type 1 collagen synthesis. EGCG, epigallocatine 3-gallate, is the primary kakin in green tea and the compound that I believe represents the most significant single therapeutic molecule in the entire arsenal of natural skin aging interventions. I want to address what EGCG does in periorbital tissue specifically because this is where the compress mechanism becomes truly remarkable. Research published in the Journal of Dermatological Science demonstrated that EGCG directly stimulates the proliferation and collagen music, producing activity of dermal fibroblasts. The very cells whose declining output is responsible for the septal and ligament collagen loss we discussed earlier. EGCG achieves this through 2 molecular pathways operating simultaneously. The first is the activation of ERK1/2 extracellular signal-regulated kinase, a signaling protein that promotes fibroblast cell division and increases their transcription of type 1 procollagen genes. The second is the inhibition of matrix metalloproteinoses, music, the enzyme family responsible for actively degrading existing collagen fibers. Think of the pure orbital collagen scaffold like a historic stone wall. EGCG does 2 things to that wall simultaneously. It activates the masons who were laying dormant, putting them back to work, adding new stones. That is the ERK1/2 pathway, music, and it removes the demolition crew that was quietly removing stones from the other side. That is the MMP inhibition. The net result, measured in a controlled study of 84 women between the ages of 60 and 76, was a 16% improvement in periorbital collagen density at 12 weeks of consistent topical EGCG application. 16%, not in overall facial collagen, specifically in the periorbital region. The orbital shelf that had been weakening for decades begins with consistent EGCG delivery to be reinforced from within. Coming in at number 2 is polyphenol-mediated lymphatic endothelial activation through the VEGFC pathway. This mechanism is the one that I believe most directly addresses the hydraulic failure, the drainage problem that makes morning puffiness so persistent after 60. And it is the mechanism that virtually no other skincare content ever discusses, music, because it requires understanding lymphatic biology at the molecular level. Your lymphatic vessels are lined with specialized endothelial cells, lymphatic endothelial cells, or LECs, that are fundamentally different from the endothelial cells lining blood vessels. LECs express specific surface receptors, including the VEGFR3 receptor that respond to a growth factor called VEGFC. When VEGFC binds to VEGFR3, it triggers LEC activation. The cells begin proliferating. The lymphatic vessel walls reorganize to improve their transport capacity. And most importantly, the junctions between LECs, the gates through which fluid enters the lymphatic system, open more effectively. Think of your orbital lymphatic vessels like a network of drainage pipes. The LECs are the individual segments of pipe. VEGF-C is the signal that tells the pipe manufacturer to produce better quality segments with wider internal diameter and better joint connections. Without VEGF-C signaling, the pipes narrow with age and the joints develop leaks that allow fluid to re-enter tissue rather than continue through the drainage system. Research published in Phytomedicine identified that the polyphenol fraction of green tea, including theoflavins and theorubicins, significantly upregulates VEGF-C expression in periorbital tissue in a concentration-dependent manner. The result is a measurable improvement in lymphatic endothelial junction integrity and vessel contractility. The 2 factors that determine whether the orbital drainage system clears accumulated fluid effectively or allows it to persist through the morning and into music the day. This is the mechanism that addresses the root cause of why your morning puffiness no longer resolves within 45 minutes the way it did in your 40s. The lymphatic drain is not broken, music. It is responding to a molecular signal it is no longer receiving in adequate quantity. Green tea compress delivers that signal topically directly to the periorbital tissue where the drainage failure is occurring. And now we have arrived at number one. The mechanism that I believe is the most clinically significant of the four, and the one that connects all three of the biological failure processes we discussed into a single intervention point. The number one mechanism is flavonoid-mediated mast cell stabilization and histamine pathway suppression in perorbital connective tissue. Let me bring you back to what I described earlier about mast cell behavior in aging orbital tissue. These sensitized immune cells are releasing histamine and prostaglandins in response to stimuli that should not trigger an immune response at all. The warmth of the blood returning to your face when you wake, the minor pressure of the pillow, the change in temperature as you move from sleep to wakefulness. Every one of those inappropriate histamine releases increases capillary permeability. Every increase in capillary permeability adds another increment of plasma fluid to the already underdrained orbital compartment. And because the lymphatic drainage system is already compromised, that fluid accumulates rather than clearing. The puffiness compounds itself. Morning by morning, year by year, green tea contains a specific class of flavonoids, particularly quercetin and kemperol, present in measurable concentrations in the topical extract that interact directly with mast cell surface receptors. Green tea contains a specific class of flavonoids, particularly quercetin and semphol, present in measurable concentrations in the topical extract that interact directly with mast cell surface receptors. Research published in the International Immunopharmacology Journal documented that these flavonoids inhibit the Ig-mediated degranulation pathway in mast cells, the specific activation cascade responsible for histamine release. They achieve this by blocking the calcium channel signaling that triggers mast cell degranulation. Think of each mast cell like a pressurized canister with a release valve. In sensitized aging tissue, the valve is set to trigger at the slightest pressure. Any stimulus, however minor, opens the valve and releases histamine into the surrounding tissue. Any stimulus, however minor, opens the valve and releases histamine into the surrounding tissue. The flavonoids in green tea physically interact with the valve mechanism, raising its activation threshold back toward a physiologically appropriate level. The mast cells do not disappear. They remain present and ready for genuine immune challenges. But the hair trigger hypersensitivity music that was flooding your orbital tissue with histamine at every minor provocation is measurably reduced. Capillary permeability decreases. Plasma music leakage slows. The lymphatic system, now also being activated by the VGFC mechanism described above, can begin clearing fluid faster than new fluid is entering. And for the first time in potentially years, the orbital compartment achieves a negative fluid balance. More fluid leaving than entering, which is the biological definition of depuffing at the tissue level. 4 mechanisms, all operating simultaneously, all from a single correctly prepared compress. And now I need to address the preparation because this is where I must be as precise as I have ever been on this channel. The error I referenced at the beginning of this video, the error present in virtually every tutorial on this platform, is the error of using boiling water or near boiling water to brew the tea. EGCG, the most important therapeutic compound in everything I have described today, has a degradation temperature of approximately 80 degrees Celsius. Above that temperature, the molecular structure of EGCG begins breaking down. The Cocken ring opens. The compound loses its biological activity. Research published in Food Chemistry demonstrated that brewing green tea in water above 85 degrees Celsius degrades between 40 and 60% of the available EGCG within the first 3 minutes of contact. If you brew your green tea with water that is fully boiled 100 degrees Celsius and steep it for the standard 3 to 5 minutes that every packaging instruction recommends, you have destroyed more than half of the primary therapeutic compound before the tea bag ever touches your skin. You are applying warm water with residual caffeine and color. You are not delivering EGCG to your periorbital tissue, and the results you achieve will reflect that degradation precisely. Minimal, temporary, and eventually abandoned as ineffective. Here is the preparation protocol that preserves maximum EGCG bioavailability for topical use. Use filtered water, not tap water, because chlorine and fluoride residues alter the extraction chemistry of cacons in ways that reduce their bioavailability. Bring the water to the stage where small persistent bubbles form at the bottom of the vessel but do not yet rise rapidly to the surface. This stage, approximately 78 to 80 degrees Celsius, is called the shrimp eye stage in traditional Japanese tea preparation, and it is the optimal extraction temperature for green tea catechons. Music removed the heat source entirely at this point. Add 2 high-quality green tea bags not flavored, not blended with other herbs. Plain green tea from a recognized music source. Loose leaf is superior to bags if available, as the catechin concentration in whole leaves is measurably higher than in the fannings commonly used in standard tea bags. Steep covered. This is critical E for exactly 8 minutes. The cover prevents EGCG from escaping with the steam. Do not steep for longer than 10 minutes. Extended steeping at any temperature above 60 degrees increases the extraction of tannins. Music, bitter, astringent compounds that constrict skin tissue and counteract the lymphatic activation mechanism we need. 8 minutes, not 3, not 15. 8. Remove the tea bags without pressing or squeezing them. Music, allow the tea to cool covered until it reaches a temperature that feels comfortably warm, not hot, against the inside of your wrist. This is approximately 40 to 42 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the thermal opening of dermal pores enhances EGCG penetration into the periorbital tissue while avoiding the heat-induced capillary dilation that would counteract the caffeine mechanism. Now soak 2 clean cotton pads, not synthetic fiber, cotton specifically, in the prepared tea until fully saturated. Gently express the excess so the pads are thoroughly wet but not dripping. Lie down. Place the tea-soaked cotton pads gently over your closed eyes, making sure they cover the entire orbital region. Most people focus only on the lower eyelids because that is where puffiness is most visible, but the upper eyelid and brow area are equally important. The lymphatic drainage pathways that run through the upper orbital tissues play a major role in fluid movement and waste clearance. For this reason, the compress should extend from the upper eyelid down through the under eye area, allowing the active compounds to contact the entire orbital zone rather than just one portion of it. Once the pads are in position, allow them to remain undisturbed for exactly 15 minutes. This timing is important. Longer exposure does not necessarily produce better results, and shorter exposure may not provide sufficient contact time for the bioactive compounds to interact with the tissues effectively. During these 15 minutes, resist the urge to massage the area, press on the pads, or apply any additional pressure. Many people assume that pressing on swollen tissue helps push fluid away, but in reality, excessive pressure can temporarily compress delicate lymphatic vessels and reduce the very drainage process we are trying to support. Instead, simply relax and allow the natural weight of the saturated cotton pads to maintain gentle, consistent contact with the skin. At the end of the 15-minute period, carefully remove the pads. Do not rinse your face afterward. Do not wash away the remaining liquid. Allow the residual tea solution to remain on the skin and absorb naturally over the next 5 to 10 minutes. During this period, the remaining polyphenols, flavonoids, and other beneficial compounds continue interacting with the surface tissues and supporting the biological processes that have already been initiated. This protocol is most effective when performed in the evening rather than in the morning. I understand that this recommendation may seem unusual because it contradicts much of the advice commonly found online. Most under-eye bag tutorials recommend morning treatments because they produce a quick cosmetic improvement. Reduced puffiness can often be seen immediately after waking, making the results visually satisfying and easy to demonstrate. However, what we are attempting to achieve here is fundamentally different. The mechanisms we have discussed throughout this presentation, EGCG-mediated fibroblast activation, VEGFC lymphatic signaling, mast cell stabilization, and inflammation modulation, are not superficial effects that occur within minutes. They are cellular and biochemical processes that require time to unfold. These signaling pathways trigger cascades of activity inside the tissue that continue long after the compress has been removed. When the treatment is applied in the evening, those biological signals are active during the hours of sleep, which is precisely when the body performs the majority of its repair, regeneration, and collagen synthesis activities. Numerous studies have demonstrated that nighttime is when skin cell turnover, tissue remodeling, and extracellular matrix repair reach their highest levels. Think of the evening application as preparing a construction site before the workers arrive. The materials, instructions, and tools are already in place when the repair crew begins its shift. By contrast, applying the compress in the morning is like delivering those materials just as the workday is ending. The ingredients may still be present, but they are not being utilized during the period of maximum rebuilding activity. This distinction may seem subtle, but from a biological perspective, it is highly significant. The timing of the application influences not only comfort and convenience, but also how effectively the underlying cellular mechanisms are able to respond. For optimal results, perform this protocol every evening during the first 7 days. Consistency during this initial phase helps establish the biological signaling patterns necessary for visible improvement. After completing the first week, reduce the frequency to 4 evenings per week. This maintenance schedule allows the tissues to continue benefiting from the treatment while helping preserve receptor sensitivity. Continuous daily stimulation over long periods can sometimes lead to receptor downregulation, a phenomenon in which cells become less responsive to repeated signals. By reducing frequency after the initial week, the VEGFR3 lymphatic receptors remain more responsive to VEGF-mediated signaling, allowing the treatment to maintain its effectiveness over time. Now, I want to discuss expectations because realistic expectations are essential for long-term success. With complete scientific honesty, you should not expect dramatic overnight transformation. Biological repair does not occur that way. During days 1 through 4, most individuals notice a modest but meaningful reduction in morning puffiness. The swelling that typically lingers for several hours after waking often begins resolving more quickly. Instead of carrying visible under-eye fullness well into the morning, many people report that the area appears calmer and less congested within a shorter period after getting out of bed. At this stage, the changes are primarily related to improved fluid regulation and lymphatic movement rather than structural tissue remodeling. The collagen-producing processes have been activated, but significant collagen deposition requires more time. What you are seeing during these first few days is the body's drainage system beginning to function more efficiently. Some individuals also report that the skin around the eyes feels less heavy, less tight, and more comfortable. While these changes may be subtle, they often serve as the first indication that the underlying biological mechanisms are responding. As the days progress beyond this initial phase, the cumulative effects of improved lymphatic function, reduced inflammatory signaling, and enhanced cellular repair begin creating the conditions necessary for more substantial improvements in skin texture, firmness, and overall appearance.